Welcome back to another episode of Happy Go Lucky Beho Reviews. Today we are talking about Capcom, a company with the mindset of cashing in on consumers before there were microtransactions that we see today. How did they do it? They took a super popular game, made some minor updates, and re-released it at full price. Did the masses fall for it? Hell yes, we did. The game is known as Street Fighter. These days, those updates are pretty much known as microtransactions, DLC, and patches. But back then, there was no internet in console gaming, hence the upgrades and the re-releases. I was one of the biggest fools of them all, as I almost bought every upgrade they had. Let's go down memory lane and see how many games I actually spent money on and given to Capcom my savings and love. As I said before, I was a huge, and still am, a huge Sega fan and could see no wrong with what they did until I played my heart out in the arcades, spending way too much money on Street Fighter II The World Warrior. When I found out it was coming to the Super Nintendo and not the Sega Genesis, my world ended and I begged to get a Super Nintendo. I was able to save just enough money and get the system, but I couldn't wait for the release for the American version of Street Fighter II and bought the Japanese Famicom version for $120. Was it worth the wait to be the first person to have it? Yep, I was Mr. Popular for the summer of 1992 before its North American release. Of course, Sega was mad and wanted Street Fighter for their own system as the console wars grew. In my book, if Street Fighter never came to the Super Nintendo, Sega would have won hands down, as that one game was a system seller for the Super Nintendo. Sega came through with Street Fighter II Special Champion Edition later on, which added playable bosses and same character selection. So what do? Not to be outdone, Super Nintendo had Street Fighter II Turbo, which was the same thing except a bit slower on how fast you can actually play the game. In the end, I chose the Super Nintendo version of Turbo since I already was used to the controller and the Genesis only had 3 buttons. Once the 6-button pad came out, everyone touted that the Genesis played way better, so I ended up getting that anyways. So I spent an additional $130 for both versions that I had to have. Then, Capcom added 4 new characters and called it Super Street Fighter 2. Oh my god, I had to have it, and this time around I got the Genesis version. I was happy and content, but the Street Fighter phase was wearing thin on me after spending yet another $60. So time passed and then came out a prequel, Street Fighter Alpha, which was the game before Street Fighter 2, which looked like an anime with 2D gameplay and better idea of supers. Played it on the arcades like crazy, and then I bought it for my Sega Saturn. At least Capcom releases sequels instead of updates this time around with Alpha 2 and 3. But if you ask me, they were the same game with more characters this go around. I have all 3 on the Sega Saturn and Alpha 3 on the PlayStation Portable or PSP, which was a gift from my buddy John, so we won't count that one as one that I purchased. Then my buddy John says we need to go to Golfland in Sunnydale. That's where Capcom tests their new fighting games. Lo and behold, Street Fighter 3, with its new super animated glory. Weird that there was no Chun-Li or Guile character except for some weird French dude that I could never get used to. By the way, my go-to characters are always going to be Guile or Chun-Li for the first go-around. I knew better and I said I'm gonna wait because I know what Capcom always does by now. So I waited and I watched Second Impact pass and I own a Dreamcast still waiting and finally getting Street Fighter 3 Third Impact as it finally came, and I just got my adapter for the Dreamcast to use my Sega Saturn pad. I played my heart's content using another $60 to Capcom. After Street Fighter 3 and into the new HD consoles with the Xbox 360, Capcom decided to redo the original Street Fighter with Street Fighter HD Remix. This game took the original 2D gameplay and replaced it with upgraded HD graphics, which looked awesome. But of course, it was still the same game in its core. As time passed, the fighting genre seemed to be at an end, with the Marvel series keeping me busy. Then the game returned with Street Fighter 4 on Xbox 360. I loved it, and I also bought a Chun-Li pad, but it was nothing like the old Saturn pad. I even bought the collector's version with the animated feature that pretty much sucked for another whopping $80. Of course, Capcom did again with a super version at a lower price this time, but I said no, and I got it for free anyways on Xbox Live with the arcade version attached as well. All in all, it was actually a very good update. We move on to Street Fighter V. That was one I was left out on because it was only released on a PC and a PS4 at the time in 2016. Telling myself it's just another update from Street Fighter 4 with better graphics, and plus I had no fighting controller for the PC, but secretly I needed to play. No, I wanted to play Street Fighter V so badly. Then came the wireless Saturn pad for the PC and Saturn from Retrobit. Whoa, no more excuses. I bought the pad and it works wonders on the Saturn and PC. I finally have a Street Fighter V in 2019 at $20 on Steam. A little late to the party, but at least all the patches and updates are included, and I'm glad to say that Capcom really invested in this game from just 2016. So I spent roughly $750 total with controllers just for the Street Fighter series so far. Wow, Capcom got me hooked pretty good. At least now I have a family and I know how to wait until the right price and the right time. Well, I hope you enjoyed my memory of Street Fighter. That's it for me, and please like and subscribe. Beho out, and Greg, take us out of here.
Yeah.
You win! Damn. Yeah. Yeah.